Guess where we are today? I'll tell you where we are today. We're in Newcastle-upon-Tyne, and I'm here with Yvonne Ridley.
Ta-da!
You're well into this campaign now. How's it going?
It's going brilliantly. Really, I'm going out on the streets now and people are coming over, they're recognising me. Most of them are very positive. And, there's a great excitement in the air.
Yvonne, 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 Yvonne.
I think it's the end of the two-party system, thank God.
Right now where we're standing there is absolutely no difference between the Conservatives and the Labour. It's like choosing between Coke and Pepsi, One's red and one's blue. They're both cola.
The issue of Gaza, we have to punish the main parties for what they've been saying on that. Do you think the Gaza issue it should be the central issue here?
I think it is become a central issue for a lot of Muslims because they see both parties have got a similar stance on it.
I mean, you look at the polls and they're predicting a Labour landslide. And you think, not where I am, mate. It's of course, the polls are being paid for by the two main parties, so obviously they're going to put themselves front and centre. But I think Keir Starmer is in for a real slapdown. I don't think that either one of them are going to have a convincing victory. In fact, it more likely will end up in a coalition where the independents or the independentistas will become an integral part of that system, which I think would be fantastic. I saw a great cartoon the other day about Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak. And somebody that said trying to choose between Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer is like trying to choose what colour tie you're going to wear after you've shat your pants. Sorry, I know that's vulgar. You can take the girl out of Newcastle, but you can't take Newcastle out of the girl.
I've been following Yvonne Ridley for decades, and I first heard about Yvonne Ridley when she was captured by the Taliban, and then she was released and she wrote a book, and I went to her book reading, and I think she's an absolutely amazing woman. She has consistently supported women around the world, globe I would say, not just around in the northeast. And I'm one of the suffrage sisters, and she has been supporting our group and women in our group around social justice issues, around issues that impact women. So why wouldn't we vote for Yvonne Ridley? She's been absolutely amazing support, a voice and advocate for women.
We have to learn to talk to people we don't like as well as people we do like. And I'm finding that out on the doorstep because I'm coming across quite a few, we might call them racists, people who are concerned about immigration. But again, that is down to the media. They've portrayed migrants as the enemy, as people who are swanning into this country, being given the keys to a council house and being given a wedge of money and go and, have a good life. And that isn't the reality at all. But if you tell a lie often enough, people will believe it. So I can understand why somebody living in a scabby flat with rising damp and hearing on the news that the latest person to come over on the boats has just been given a home. I can understand the resentment, and we shouldn't try and just slag them off. A lot of the people that I've spoken to who would be written off as racists, they have a right to their opinions and their concerns, but you can see that it's been fed from the right and the far right.
There's really strange stuff going on across the country where Workers' Party or people supporting George Galloway in any way, I mean independents who the Workers' Party are working with, they're all being, many of them are seeing independents standing against them to split the vote. We spoke to Craig Murray last week, and he thought it was something that was maybe worked on with the Labour Party involved in some way.
Oh, it's definitely coordinated. Definitely coordinate. I mean, this is fertile ground for any investigative journalist. But I have to say, I'm ashamed of my profession. I've been a journalist since the 70s. And this would have been poured over in the 70s or 80s by Panorama, Horizon, the Cook Report. He would have been right in, and his cameraman would have been beaten up as usual. It was always the cameraman that got it. But this is fertile ground for a great investigation. Just a quick phone around to friends like Craig Murray, and you realise that the arrival of these independent candidates, it's coordinated, and it's also quite sinister, because the independent who's standing in Newcastle, I think he put in his papers about 15 minutes before the cut-off time. I don't know what his motives are for standing, but he was asked up until 2 weeks before the election, are you going to stand, are you going to stand? And he said no. Put the announcement on his Facebook, I am not standing, you know, and he made himself quite clear on that. One of the people that I had a meeting with was Jamie Driscoll, the shining light who we were all told was going to be the next mayor of the North East, and he did run a good campaign. But at the end of the day, you know, no prizes for coming second. And I had a meeting with him because Newcastle Central is the jewel in the crown in the North East, and I wanted to know if he was going to stand against me. And he said no. And, you know, we had a good talk, and he said he wouldn't be supporting any of the independent candidates. And then a week later, he's standing joined at the hip with the other independent and saying that he's endorsing him. And that was quite a blow. There's a lot of people saying a lot of things in this campaign and then rolling back on them. Definitely Labour is running scared. Chi Onwurah, who is the current MP in Newcastle Central, and which is now the West as well, it's the boundaries have changed. She won't do hustings. I can't get a chance to challenge her in public. I can't debate with her. She's running scared. And that's, you know, the great thing about our democracy is being able to jump up on a soapbox and say something, and then the next candidate comes along and they say something, but there's no hustings, not a single hustings in Newcastle. I wish to hell the left would just get behind and discipline themselves and have, you know, the one aim.
Yeah.
And they're in disarray at the moment, and I saw this just a couple of weeks ago when I arrived in Newcastle and heard that the university students had set up an encampment for Gaza. And I went along, having just been in Istanbul a few days earlier, trying to get the flotilla project up and running. And I got there and the students had asked me to speak, and one of them had objected and said, oh, she's a TERF and she shouldn't be allowed to speak. And so I was told, and I just said, well, you know, they're entitled to their opinion. And I didn't want to cause a fuss and detract from what was happening in Gaza. And, you know, great that they're doing this encampment anyway. But the young person who objected to my presence there was being goaded on in the background by one of the trade unions. And I just thought, why are you working against me? You know, how many gay pride marches have you been on in Khan Yunis? You know, and it just, you know, why try and undermine me? And the same with Jamie Driscoll. Why undermine me and support the other independent candidate? This weekend coming, I've got hundreds of women, and we're calling it a Sisters' Day of Action. And they've got all sorts planned. And it goes back again to Bradford West. It was the sisters that won that election. And I am convinced that the women in Newcastle will win this election for me. And that's something that the other independent candidate hasn't got. It's something that Jamie Driscoll overlooked. He might have been mayor today had he not overlooked the fact that women are half the vote and we gave birth to the other half. So, you know, great things are going to happen in Newcastle, but we still need your help.